Welcome to my channel, my friends. Let me ask you something honest. Have you ever opened an English book and felt lost after the first page? Have you ever tried to learn new words, but they disappeared from your mind the next day? If yes, comment yes right now, because today I will show you something that changed my life. Chapter 1. The day I realized words were running away from me. I want to take you back to the moment when everything changed for me. At that time, English words were like little birds. They came close for 1 second, and then flew away before I could catch them. I tried to remember new words every day. I wrote them in my notebook. I repeated them again and again. But the next morning, they were gone. I felt confused. I felt slow. I felt like everyone else was moving forward, and I was standing in the same place. Maybe you know this feeling too. Maybe you learn a word today, but tomorrow it disappears. If that is you, don't worry. I was there too. I remember reading my first English book in school. It looked beautiful. The cover had bright colors. The story sounded exciting. But when I opened the first page, something strange happened. I understood nothing. It felt like the words were dancing in front of me, but not for me. They were dancing for other students, the smart ones, the confident ones, the ones who already knew English. I looked at them. They nodded while reading. They even smiled. But I sat there thinking, why is this so hard for me? What is wrong with my brain? And that question hurt me for many years. Every time the teacher asked us to read out loud, my heart beat too fast. I prayed she would skip my name. I didn't want to embarrass myself. I didn't want people to laugh if I said a word wrong. So I stayed quiet. Quiet in class. Quiet at home. Quiet inside my mind. I collected fear more than words. I collected shame more than knowledge. And slowly, I started believing that maybe English wasn't for me. Maybe I didn't have the talent. That thought almost made me give up. But life has a funny way of giving you small signs. One afternoon, after school, I was waiting for my bus. My bag felt heavy. My mind felt even heavier. I opened it to take out my water bottle, and one small English book fell out. It wasn't my textbook. It was something my cousin gave me weeks ago. He said, "This book is easy. Maybe it will help you." I never touched it. But that day I picked it up. I don't know why, but something inside me whispered, "Try one more time." I sat on the bench and opened page 1. And guess what? It was still difficult. But this time, something different happened. I didn't close the book. I didn't run away. I didn't feel stupid. I just felt curious. The sentences were short. The pictures made it easier. And after 5 minutes, I understood 2 new words. Just 2. But for me, it felt like a victory. Like the world was opening a small door for me. A door that had been closed for years. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about that book. I thought about those 2 words. I realized something important. I didn't need to understand everything. I just needed to understand something. One word, one sentence, one small moment of progress. That is where real learning begins. The next day, I took the book with me. During lunch break, I read 3 more pages. Then I understood 5 more words. Then 10. The story started making sense. Slowly, slowly, the book stopped feeling like a monster. It started feeling like a friend who taught me gently, patiently, quietly, without judgment, without pressure. This was the moment I understood a big secret. You don't need many books to learn English. You just need one book that you understand a little and read a lot. I didn't know it yet, but this one book would teach me 1,000 new words, and not in a boring way, not with memorization, not with fear, but with real understanding, real connection, real progress. When you learn words inside a story, they stay in your mind. When you see a word again and again in different sentences, the brain says, "Oh, this word again, maybe it is important." And then, it remembers. Not for one day, not for one week, but forever. I didn't understand science behind this at that time, but I felt it. I felt the difference. For the first time in my life, English words were not running away from me. They were staying. Slowly, silently, but they were staying. I want you to imagine that moment with me. You are holding a book, a simple book, maybe a children's book, maybe a short story. The first page looks difficult, but you keep reading. You understand one word. That word gives you energy. Then you understand two words. That gives you hope. Then a sentence. That gives you confidence. And step by step, the book becomes your teacher, not your enemy. In this chapter, I want you to feel what I felt: the fear, the confusion, the frustration, and then the spark. The moment that says, maybe I can learn English, maybe I can understand this book. Ooh, because that little spark is the beginning of everything. And this was the beginning of my journey. A journey that taught me 1,000 words from one single book. A journey that changed how I learn forever. A journey that I promise you can start today. Are you ready? Chapter 2. Why one book was enough for me. When I look back now, I realize something important. I was not bad at English. I was just lost. Lost in too many books, too many pages, too many difficult words. I kept jumping from one thing to another, hoping the next book would be easier, the next lesson would be clearer, the next teacher would magically change everything. But nothing changed, because I never stayed long enough with one thing. My mind was busy, but not learning. I was moving, but not growing. Maybe you have felt this too, starting many things but finishing none. Every English learner makes the same mistake. We think quantity is the answer. We think, if I read more books, I will learn faster. But the truth is the opposite. When you learn a little from many places, your brain gets confused. Words don't repeat. Ideas don't settle. Memory doesn't build. Everything stays loose, weak, and easy to forget. And that was my problem. I was touching English, but not living with it. I was meeting words, but not staying with them long enough to make them friends. One day, after weeks of trying many books, I sat down and asked myself a simple question. Why am I learning nothing? That question was painful, but it opened my eyes. I realized that every time things became difficult, I ran away. Every time a book felt confusing, I stopped reading it. Every time a word felt too hard, I jumped to a new list or a new video. I was not learning English. I was escaping English. And escape never builds skill. Escape only builds fear. That was the moment when I remembered the little book that helped me on the bus stop. It was the only book I actually finished reading a few pages of. It was the only book that made me feel a little confident. It was simple. It had pictures. It repeated phrases. It didn't make me feel stupid. It didn't shout at me. It didn't rush me. It gave me space to breathe. So I told myself, maybe the problem is not me. Maybe the problem is that I never stayed with one book long enough. That thought changed everything. I picked up that simple book again. I touched its soft cover. I flipped through the pages. For the first time in my life, I said, "This is it. I am not moving to any other book until I finish this one." That decision felt powerful, like choosing one road after walking in circles for years, like choosing one teacher after listening to noise from everywhere. And something magical happened. When I read the same book every day, the story became familiar, the characters became familiar, the sentences became familiar, and because of that, the words became familiar. They started sticking in my mind, not because I memorized them, but because I lived with them. I saw them again and again. I understood them from the story. I didn't need to translate everything. My brain slowly connected the meaning to the feeling of the moment. The more pages I read, the more the book became my safe place. I wasn't scared of difficult grammar. I wasn't scared of long sentences. I wasn't scared of forgetting words. Because each day, the book welcomed me like an old friend, saying, "Don't worry, I will teach you again." And it did. Every single day, without judgment, without pressure. That is when I understood the secret. One easy book can teach you more English than 10 difficult books. Why? Because repetition is powerful. Familiarity is powerful. Simplicity is powerful. When your brain feels safe, it learns faster. When your mind is relaxed, it remembers longer. When you understand a lot, you are ready to understand more. Some people asked me, "Why don't you read a higher level book?" But they didn't understand something important. Learning English is not about reading big books. It's about building big understanding. And big understanding grows from small books, small stories, simple sentences, deep repetition. The one book I chose became my entire English school. It taught me all the basic vocabulary I needed. It taught me sentence patterns. It taught me how real English feels. And because I understood most of it, I didn't feel scared. I didn't feel stupid. I felt strong. And that strength pushed me forward. Let me tell you something honestly. You will not learn 1,000 words from a difficult book. You will only learn 1,000 words from a book you enjoy, understand, and finish. Finishing builds confidence. Finishing builds memory. Finishing builds progress. When you finish one book, your brain celebrates. It says, "I did it," and that energy pushes you to read more, learn more, and become more. So why was one book enough for me? Because I gave it time. I gave it attention. I gave it effort. And in return, the book gave me vocabulary, confidence, and a new identity as an English learner. It taught me that you don't need everything. You just need the right thing. And sometimes, the right thing is small, simple, and already in your hands. If you choose one book today, and you stay with it, read it again and again, understand it deeply, and let it become your friend, you can learn 1,000 words too. Not tomorrow, not next year, but one page at a time, one word at a time, one brave moment at a time. Are you ready to see how I used that book to learn 1,000 words? Chapter 3. My secret method for learning 1,000 words naturally. When I finally chose one book and committed to it, something interesting happened. I stopped feeling afraid of English. I stopped running away from new words. Instead, I started becoming curious. And curiosity is powerful. It opens the mind. It makes learning easier. It makes the journey enjoyable. But I didn't know how to learn words properly. I didn't want to memorize long lists or write meanings again and again. I wanted to learn in a natural way, the way children learn their first language. So I slowly discovered a method that changed everything for me. A simple method that helped me learn 1,000 words without stress, without pressure, and without forgetting. The first part of my method was something very small, but very powerful. I read slowly. Yes, slowly. Not fast. Not quickly flipping pages. Not trying to look smart. I read every line with attention. I looked at every word like it was important. Because it was. Every word had a job. Every word added meaning to the story. When you read slowly, your mind has time to understand, to connect, and to remember. Most learners rush. They want to finish the page. But finishing is not learning. Feeling the words, that is learning. The second part of my method was this. I noticed words, not just read them. When a new word appeared, I didn't skip it. But I also didn't stop the whole story just to translate it. Instead, I looked at the sentence. I looked at the picture. I looked at the other words around it. And slowly, I tried to guess the meaning. Sometimes I was right. Sometimes I was wrong. But every time, my brain became stronger. Guessing meaning from context is a superpower. It trains your mind to think in English, not translate everything into your language. Then came the third part of my method. I repeated sentences, not just words. Words alone are weak. They fall out of your memory easily. But when a word lives inside a sentence, it becomes strong. For example, instead of memorizing the word forest, I repeated the sentence from the book. She walked slowly through the dark forest. When I said this sentence out loud, I remembered the sound, the feeling, the picture, and the word stayed in my mind. It stayed because it belonged somewhere. It had a story. I discovered something magical called the Magic 3, and once I used this method, every new word became easier to learn. Magic 3 means see the word, say the word, feel the word in a sentence. See means you notice the word with your eyes. You look at it clearly. Say means you speak it out loud, because your mouth learns too. Feel means you connect the word with the meaning, emotion, or picture inside the story. This is how children learn their first language. They see their mother point to a cat. They hear the sound cat. They feel the meaning, because there is an actual cat in front of them. Storybooks give us that same experience. Words connected with actions, feelings, and pictures. I didn't know it, but I was doing something very scientific. When you learn a word inside a story, the brain creates strong memory links. It becomes easy to remember because the brain loves patterns and meaning. Memorizing lists is like writing words in sand. One small wave washes everything away. But learning words through stories is like writing them on stone. They stay, even after years. Another part of my method was reading aloud. Yes, I read the book with my voice. Sometimes quietly, sometimes loudly, sometimes with emotion, sometimes like a robot. But every time I read aloud, my mouth practiced English. My tongue learned new shapes. My ears heard the sound again and again. Reading aloud turns passive reading into active speaking. It builds memory faster. It builds confidence faster. And it makes you feel connected to the story. But here is something even more important. I didn't just read the book one time. I read it many times. The first reading gave me understanding. The second reading gave me confidence. The third reading gave me fluency. And every time I read the same sentences, I learned new words without force. Because when you see a word again and again, your brain finally says, okay, I know this. I remember this. And that moment feels amazing. Slow reading, noticing words, understanding from context, repeating sentences, reading aloud, reading again. All of this became my natural learning system. I was not memorizing. I was not pushing myself. I was not punishing myself for forgetting. I was learning like a normal human, curious, relaxed, and interested. And something else started happening. The words I learned from the book started appearing everywhere, in movies, in songs, in conversations, in other books. And every time I saw a familiar word, I felt a small spark inside me, a spark of victory, a spark of progress, a spark that said, "Look, you know this word, you are growing." These sparks kept me motivated. They made me want to read more, learn more, and speak more. This chapter holds the heart of my success. My method was not magic. It was simple. It was gentle. And it worked. If you follow it, it will work for you too. You don't need a big plan. You don't need big grammar. You don't need big pressure. You just need the right book, the right approach, and the right heart. In the next chapter, I will show you how reading the same book 5 times made me smarter each time, how repetition became my teacher, my guide, and my strength. Chapter 4: How I read the same book 5 times and got smarter each time. When I tell people that I read the same book 5 times, they look at me with surprise. Some even laugh. They say, "Why would you read the same book again? Isn't that boring?" But I smile, because they don't understand the truth. They don't understand the power of repetition. They don't understand how every reading feels like opening a new window inside your own brain. They don't understand that reading the same book again and again is not boring, it is transformation. And in my case, it changed my English forever. The first time I read the book, everything felt new. The characters were strangers, the story was unfamiliar, the words felt heavy. I had to stop many times. I had to slow down. I had to guess meanings. I had to repeat sentences. I felt tired, but I also felt hope, because for the first time, I was not running away. I was not switching to a new book. I was staying. And staying is where real learning begins. The second time I read the book, something beautiful happened. The story felt lighter. The sentences felt softer. The words didn't scare me like before. They felt like they were coming toward me, not running away from me. I understood more. I didn't have to guess as much. My eyes moved faster. My mouth felt more confident when reading aloud. I felt like the book was slowly opening a door for me, a door I could not open before. And this is where I learned a big secret. Understanding grows faster when the brain already knows what's coming. When you read a story the first time, your brain works hard to build the world. It builds the characters, the scenes, the emotions, the meaning. But the second time, your brain is free. It already knows the world, so now it can focus on the words. It can notice the small details it missed before. It can listen to the rhythm of English. It can breathe. By the third time I read the book, English started to feel natural. I didn't translate anymore. I didn't panic when I saw a new word. I didn't feel like I was pretending to be an English reader. I felt like I was one. And that feeling changed my confidence. My inner voice started saying, "You can do this. You are learning. You are improving." Every page felt like a small victory. Every paragraph felt like I was building a new version of myself. The fourth reading was different. It was emotional. I started connecting with the characters. I understood their feelings, not just their words. I could hear their voices in my mind. I could see the scenes clearly. This time, I was not reading English. I was feeling English. And that is the moment when I realized the truth. Language is not learned by force. It is learned by feeling. When you feel the language, you remember it naturally. You don't need effort. You don't need stress. You just need connection. By the fifth reading, something unbelievable happened. I started predicting sentences before even reading them. I knew what the characters would say. I knew how the scenes would move. I knew which words would appear. And because I knew all this, my brain noticed new things I had never seen before. Every little detail that was invisible in the beginning suddenly appeared clearly. It was like watching the same movie 5 times. You notice new things each time, things you didn't see before. This is when the book stopped being just a book. It became a teacher, a guide, a mirror showing me how far I had come. When I first started, I understood maybe 20% of the story. The second time, maybe 40%. The third time, 60%. By the fifth time, I understood almost everything. And this made me realize something powerful. Repetition is not doing the same thing again. Repetition is understanding more every time. And because I read the book 5 times, I learned the words naturally. I didn't memorize them. I didn't force them. I didn't study them like a student. I absorbed them like a human, like a child learning a language for the first time. Words that confused me before started to shine. Words that scared me before became comfortable. Words that felt distant before became familiar friends. Some people think intelligence means learning fast, but that is not true. Intelligence means learning deeply, slowly, with patience, with feeling. And one book can give you that depth. One story can give you that patience. One journey can give you that transformation. When I finished the fifth reading, I closed the book and held it close. I felt proud. I felt strong. I felt different. That book gave me more than vocabulary. It gave me confidence. It gave me belief. It gave me a new identity. I was no longer the scared student who ran away from English. I was the student who stayed, who learned, who grew, who changed. And this is why I always tell you, don't chase too many books. Choose one book and let it change your life. One book can teach you 1,000 words. One book can make English feel natural. One book can make you a reader. And once you become a reader, speaking, writing, listening, everything becomes easier. Your journey can start from that one book too. Are you ready to see how those words became a part of my daily life? Chapter 5: Turning Words into My Daily Life. Learning words from one book was powerful, but something even more magical happened when those words started leaving the pages and entering my real life. At first, I didn't even notice it. I was reading the same book again and again, and the words felt familiar inside the story. But one morning, something small changed inside me. I woke up, picked up my toothbrush, and without thinking, I said to myself in English, "I am getting ready." It was a simple sentence, a tiny sentence, but it came naturally. It came without force, without translation, without fear. And that moment showed me the truth. The book was not just teaching me vocabulary, it was teaching me to live in English. After that morning, I started talking to myself more. Not big, difficult sentences, just small ones, simple ones. Sentences from the book. Sentences I understood. Sentences that felt like they belonged to me now. When I walked outside, I looked at the sky and whispered, "The sky is bright today." When I ate my breakfast, I said, "I am eating an egg." When I sat to study, I said, "I am ready to learn." These were not grammar exercises. These were not school tasks. These were moments of real English. And little by little, those moments grew like seeds. They became part of my thinking. They became part of my day. I realized something important. You don't learn English only by reading. You learn English by using what you read. If a word stays in the book, you will forget it. But if a word comes into your life, it becomes yours forever. That's why I began using every new word from the book in my daily routine. If the book said forest, I used it. I feel like walking through a forest. If the book said worried, I used it. I am worried about my test. If the book said brave, I used it. Today, I will be brave. It didn't matter if the situation was perfect. It didn't matter if I used the sentence in the right place. What mattered was practice. What mattered was connection. What mattered was repetition. When I used the words in my daily life, my brain finally understood that these words were not just story words. They were real words for real moments, and that is when they truly stayed in my memory. I also started writing short sentences in a small notebook. Not long paragraphs, not perfect grammar, just small daily lines. I feel tired today. My room is messy. I want to learn more English. These simple lines made me feel like English was becoming a part of me. Writing helped me see the words. Reading helped me feel the words. Speaking helped me use the words. And thinking helped me remember the words. All four together created a strong circle of learning. One of the biggest changes came when I started thinking in English. I didn't force myself. It just happened slowly, because I was using the words all day. Sometimes, when someone asked me a question, the answer first came in English, even though we were not speaking English. I would look at an object, and the English word appeared in my mind before the word in my own language. It was strange at first, but also exciting. I felt like something big was happening. And you know what? Thinking in English is not a big, scary thing like people say. It doesn't happen suddenly. It doesn't happen after a long grammar course. It happens naturally, silently, slowly, when you use simple words again and again until they become your automatic language. And that is exactly what happened to me. The words from the book became the words of my day, then the words of my mind, then the words of my life. Another important thing I did was speaking with myself in the mirror. I know it sounds funny, but it helped me a lot. I would stand in front of the mirror and practice sentences from the book. Hello, how are you? I am feeling better today. I am not afraid anymore. The mirror made me feel like I was talking to someone. It made me more confident. It made me listen to myself. And slowly, speaking became less scary, less awkward, more natural. I also use new words in small conversations with my friends. Not big, complicated lines. Just small moments. If we were walking, and someone looked worried, I said, "You look worried." If someone did something brave, I said, "That was brave." They were simple, but they made me feel proud. I felt like English was alive inside me. I felt like I wasn't just studying English, I was living it. This chapter is the heart of the transformation. Learning words is easy. Using them is skill. And that skill grows through daily life, through real feelings, through small actions, through honest attempts, through small brave moments when you decide to speak, even if your voice shakes a little. By turning words into my daily life, I didn't just learn 1,000 words. I became a person who could think, speak, and feel in English. And that is the moment when English stops being a subject and becomes a part of your identity. Are you ready to see how this one book helped me become fluent in speaking? Chapter 6. How One Book Made Me Fluent in Speaking. There is a moment in every English learner's life when something finally changes. A moment when the words that once lived only in books start coming out of your mouth. A moment when English stops feeling like a school subject and starts feeling like a voice inside you. For me, that moment came because of one simple book. A book that I read again and again. A book that taught me words, sentences, rhythm, feeling, and slowly, speaking. I never expected a book to make me fluent, but looking back now, I understand exactly why it worked. The book didn't teach me English like a teacher, it taught me English like a friend. I remember the first time I tried to speak after reading that book many times. I was sitting alone in my room. The book was open in front of me. I read a line slowly. She walked carefully across the road. I whispered it once. Then again, louder. Then again, with more confidence. Suddenly something clicked inside me. The sentence felt natural. It didn't feel like a line I memorized. It felt like a line I understood. And when understanding enters your heart, the fear starts leaving your mouth. Speaking English scares most learners, not because they don't know words, but because they don't know how to put those words together. But my one book gave me that skill without me even noticing. Every sentence in the book had a pattern, a structure, a music, and each time I read it, my mind was secretly learning that music. It was learning how English flows, how English breathes, how English sounds, and that rhythm naturally came into my speaking. I didn't practice complicated grammar rules. I didn't memorize textbook dialogues. I didn't force myself to speak fast. I started with simple lines from the book. I started with sentences I felt connected to. I am tired. I want to go. He is my friend. She is happy today. These sentences were not fancy, but they were real. They were clear. They were possible for my mouth. And every time I spoke one, I felt a little stronger. I also did something that helped me grow even more. I shadowed the book. Shadowing means you listen to someone speak and try to copy their voice, their tone, their rhythm at the same time. I found an audio version of a similar story online. It wasn't the exact book, but it had the same level, same type of sentences, same style. I listened for 1 minute, then I tried to copy. At first, it felt impossible. My tongue didn't move fast enough. My voice sounded strange. I paused too much. I made mistakes. But I didn't stop. I kept going. Slowly, my mouth learned the shape of English. Slowly, my tongue learned the movement. Slowly, my fear became smaller and smaller. The beautiful thing about shadowing is that it makes you feel like you are speaking with someone, even if you are alone. It removes loneliness from learning. It gives you a partner, a guide. And that guide teaches you something grammar books can never teach, the real sound of English. Another big change happened when I started reading the book aloud with emotion. Yes, with emotion. When a character was sad, I read the lines sadly. When someone was excited, I read with excitement. When something was funny, I smiled while reading. I didn't know it then, but I was training my speaking muscles. I was training my voice. I was training my feeling. And good speaking always comes from feeling, not from rules. The more I read aloud, the more natural English became. Sometimes I walked around the house speaking lines from the book. Sometimes I said them while cooking. Sometimes I whispered them before sleeping. And something unexpected started happening. My mouth began creating new sentences on its own. Not sentences from the book. New sentences. My sentences. My thoughts. My ideas. My emotions. This was the moment I knew I was becoming fluent. Fluency does not start with perfect grammar, it starts with freedom. Freedom to speak, freedom to make mistakes, freedom to use simple words, freedom to say something, even if it is not perfect. And that one book gave me that freedom. It made speaking so easy because I already knew the words, I already knew the patterns, I already knew the story, I already knew the feeling. It was like English was growing inside me without me forcing it. I also practiced speaking conversations from the book with myself. If the book said, "Where are you going?" I stopped and answered, "I am going home." If the book said, "Are you afraid?" I replied, "No, I am brave." It sounds simple, but these mini conversations trained my brain to think fast, to respond quickly, to speak naturally. They made English feel like a living language, not a school assignment. And then came the day when I finally spoke English with a real person. It was short, it was simple, it was not perfect, but it was real. I understood them. They understood me. And I felt like I had climbed a mountain that once looked impossible. But I didn't reach the top with hundreds of textbooks. I reached it with one book, one voice, one journey. This chapter holds one big message for you. You don't need many resources to speak English fluently. You need one book you trust, one method you follow, and one brave heart that doesn't give up. Are you ready for the final step, how I learned 1,000 words and turned them into real confidence? Chapter 7. You can learn 1,000 words. 2. Starting today. When I finally realized that one simple book had taught me more than years of studying, something powerful happened inside me. I understood that learning English is not about talent. It's not about being smart. It's not about having the best school, the best teacher, or the best accent. It is about direction. It is about consistency. It is about choosing one small path and walking it every single day. That is how I learned 1,000 words from one book. Not because I was special, but because I stayed with one simple thing long enough to let it change me. And today, I want you to feel something deep in your heart. You can do this too. Maybe you think learning 1,000 words is impossible. Maybe you think you don't have enough time, enough skill, or enough confidence. Maybe you think your English is too weak. Maybe you think you are too old. Maybe you think you are too slow. But let me tell you something honestly, something I learned the hard way. The only thing that stops you from learning English is the belief that you can't. And that belief is not true. You are more capable than you think. You are stronger than you think. And English is easier than you think when you learn it the right way. Let me show you how you can start today, right now, with the same simple steps that helped me learn 1,000 words naturally. First, you need to choose one book, not 10 books, not difficult novels, not complicated grammar guides. Choose one easy, short, simple English book, a children's story, a beginner reader, a small novel, something that you can understand at least 50% of. If you understand half, you can learn the other half. If you choose a book that is too hard, you will give up. If you choose a book that is too easy, you will not grow. So choose a book that gives you a little comfort and a little challenge. After that, read the book every day, even if it is only one page, even if it is only 10 minutes, even if it is only a small part. Because daily reading builds daily memory. Words repeat, sentences repeat, ideas repeat, and repetition is the mother of learning. You don't need to study for 3 hours. You just need to show up every day. The book doesn't teach you in one big moment. It teaches you in hundreds of small moments. And those small moments create big results. Next, make a small vocabulary notebook. Not a thick, heavy one. A small one that feels friendly. Write only the words that appear many times in the book. Not every word. Not rare words. Only the important ones. The words that the story uses again and again. Those are the words your brain needs. Those are the words you will actually use in real life. And for each word, write one simple sentence. Your sentence. Not the book's sentence. Your sentence makes the word real for you. It connects the word to your life, your feelings, your world. Then comes the most important part. Use the words. Use them while speaking to yourself. Use them in your thoughts. Use them in small conversations. Use them when you are cooking, walking, cleaning, waiting. English must become a part of your life, not just your notebook. The more you use a word, the deeper it stays. The deeper it stays, the faster you grow. And when you use words from the book, your brain feels safe because it remembers them from the story. Another thing you must do is reread the book. Not one time, not 2 times, many times. Rereading builds confidence. The first time you understand a little. The second time you understand more. The third time you feel strong. The fourth time you feel natural. The fifth time you feel connected. Every time you read again, something new enters your memory. Something new becomes clear. Something new becomes easy. And one simple book slowly becomes the foundation of your English life. The truth is, anyone can learn 1,000 words. Anyone, even someone who feels weak, even someone who failed before, even someone who is just starting. Because learning 1,000 words does not happen in one day. It happens word by word, sentence by sentence, page by page. And when you understand that, you stop feeling pressure. You stop feeling stress. You start feeling excited. Because now you know the secret. Small steps create big English. And I want you to remember this. English is not your enemy. It is not a mountain you cannot climb. It is a friend, a tool, a door, a key. And every word you learn is a step toward a bigger life. A life where you can talk to more people, understand more things, explore more places, and express more feelings. So reel them all. So yes, you can learn 1,000 words. Yes, you can speak English confidently. Yes, you can transform your life with one simple book. I did it. And you can do it too. All you need is courage to start, and patience to continue. Before we end, I want to ask you something. Which book do you want to start with? Tell me in the comments. And if you want me to make a video recommending the best beginner-friendly books, just write yes please.